claims to fame is that we actually, that the Latino liaison for Senator Warner's presidential campaign is one of our alumni. So we think that's really cool. Today, we'd like to talk to you a little bit about the current resources available in Northern Virginia for the immigrant community in this crisis. We have with us 4 distinguished guests who represent 3 jurisdictions as well as a nonprofit agency in one of those jurisdictions. And so what we'd like to do is ask them some questions and field some questions from folks about what their concerns are and how they're serving their respective communities in this time. So what I'd like to do now is introduce our panelists, and we'll start with Kate Garvey, who is the Director of the Department of Community and Human Services, DCHS, for the City of Alexandria. DCHS is a unified department that is focused on the safety, well-being, and economic security of residents. She has worked in Montgomery County, Maryland, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the public and nonprofit organizations serving individuals and families, and focusing on the building of community. Kate, welcome.
Thanks very much.
Hammond Perez is the Economic Independence Division Chief for Arlington County. She oversees the administration of public benefits, housing subsidies, homeless shelters, the Arlington Employment Center, eviction prevention assistance, and community assistance programs for the county. Brooke, nice to see you again after all this time.
Thank you.
Joshua Nam is a Community Outreach Director for Fairfax County Providence District Supervisor Dahlia Palchik. Prior to working in Supervisor Palchik's office, Joshua was an educator and community organizer with an immigrant justice organization in Northern Virginia. In addition to outreach efforts in the district, Joshua aids the supervisor on immigration, transportation, and education issues. He is from Honolulu, Hawaii, but has called Northern Virginia home for the past few years. Joshua, thanks for joining us. Stacy Picard is the Assistant Director of the Social Services Department at the Dar al-Hijra Islamic Center in Falls Church. The DAH Social Services Department serves families in the Culmore community of Fairfax County, as well as Arlington and the City of Alexandria. Their programs include family assistance, empowerment classes, and community events. All are welcome at Dar al-Hijra, and more than 500 people a week access their services. Stacy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Bob.
Well, welcome to everyone listening. You'll be able to see this on YouTube after the event forever. So hopefully those resources will be available for you, and the resources that we discussed today will be available for you to see. I'd like to just start out with some of the questions, and I'm going to start with Kate, and then we'll work our way around the folks. So Kate, can you tell us about the immigrant community in Alexandria and how it's coping in the current situation, how it's coping with maybe the rise in unemployment and social isolation and everything that has to do with this crisis?
Sure. There really has been a significant impact, particularly on our Latinx residents. They have been disproportionately impacted with the virus. They make up 17% of our population, but make up 55% of the cases in Alexandria. So that has been very significant, as well as the impact of really the financial destruction that has taken place during this pandemic. And so we have really seen tremendous need when the need for increased testing, really the pressures of housing and inadequate housing, as well as the need for food, supplies, PPE. So it's really been a major impact. And thankfully, I know we'll talk about this later, There's been a tremendous response from our nonprofit community, the faith community, and the public sector to respond. But it has really been devastating, and honestly points up the critical issues that exist at all times with Black and Brown population within our communities, and really the level of inequity that exists. And this pandemic has shown the light on it very, very brightly.
Yes, Brooke, if you would.
Oh, wonderful. Hi, everyone. I'm Brooke with Arlington County. So yes, to kind of echo what Ms. Garvey was referring to, we also have seen a disproportionate effect of the pandemic on Black and Brown populations in Arlington County and individuals of color. Arlington has, I'm very proud of all the work we've been trying to do to respond, but a lot of this is just so unprecedented. So we are doing our best. We have set up a walk-up testing site for residents, because one of the things we notice, especially with undocumented residents that don't have health insurance and can't get a doctor's script for a COVID test, it was causing a big issue, as well as some of these drive-through testing sites, not everyone drives. So we've set up a walk-up testing site at our Arlington Mill Community Center, and we are providing scripts right there on the spot for the COVID test. We have 2 hotel operations in place right now, quarantine hotels for Arlington residents, and we've actually opened it up to other neighboring jurisdiction residents, because this is a public health national crisis, not just an Arlington crisis, for individuals who cannot effectively quarantine at home. So we have seen lots of immigrant populations at the hotel, because they were living in overcrowded apartments, sharing a room with multiple individuals that might be from different households, different families, and we're not able to effectively isolate. So we are providing free hotel accommodations and food and sheltering for those individuals that are either positive, presumed positive, directly exposed, or at risk for the virus. And we have really and are lucky to have the backing of our county board, which is very supportive of helping immigrant populations in Arlington, including undocumented immigrants. We have really ramped up our eviction prevention assistance and have provided over $1.8 million to date for individuals who are facing unpaid rents, utilities, as well as medical bills, transportation bills, internet bills, because a lot of immigrants didn't have internet at home and they need it for their kids to properly go to school from home and, attend classes. So we have provided over $1.8 million since March 13th to individuals to keep them in their homes and not have them get backed up with unpaid rents. Right now there's a moratorium on evictions, but our concern is we don't want that moratorium to be lifted and a whole bunch of immigrant families to be evicted. So we are trying to stay on top of paying individuals rents month after month for those who need it. And I can give information later on the call on how to access those services.
All right, thank you. Stacy.
Yes, hello everybody. It's good to be with you today. I would echo what Brooke and Kate have said. We are in one of the largest immigration entry points in the country, and therefore one of the most diverse, where we are in Culmore, in the 2044 and 22044 and 22041 zip codes. Very large Hispanic population, Ethiopian population. Our Islamic Center is the home to Muslims from over 50 countries around the world. And to echo what Brooke and Kate have said, is that we've seen a pandemic that has affected everybody. There isn't a single person that has not been touched by the pandemic in some way, but it certainly has not affected everybody in the same way. So it's really highlighted some social inequities that exist for people of color and poor people, and we've seen that as well. I think especially, as some have touched on, the density of the housing because of the lack of affordable housing has made it very, very difficult for infected populations or infected families to isolate. So there may be up to 5 families or groups of individuals who are not related, not families, living in a small apartment, and it's just impossible to isolate. So we're in the Mason district of Fairfax County, and I have to say that I think the county has made really good efforts to address these issues. Of course, this is unprecedented. We're all walking through it for the first time, but this has been one of the challenges, one of the big challenges that we've faced. In terms of resources, our social services office has a pretty robust spectrum of services that we normally offer. When we were forced to close the center on March 13th, when the state shut down, we pivoted, all of our programs were suspended indefinitely, and we pivoted entirely toward food distribution. So that has been our focus for the last 3.5 months. We have always had a weekly food distribution on Thursday mornings where we distribute fresh produce and halal chicken and bread. We've seen those numbers climb significantly each week, climbing 25% until we topped just over 400 on Thursday mornings. And in addition to that, we've been distributing another nearly 1,000 produce bags, boxes of halal chicken, or hot meals through community partners, such as Second Story at the Culmore Resource Center, CASA, the Vietnamese Resettlement Association, Culmore Clinic Patients, the Alive Food Bank in Alexandria. So we're really trying to help get food, be more of a hub, and help get food to families that we know might not know about the mosque or might not feel comfortable coming to a mosque, or for whatever reason, trying to help reach those families.
All right. How about now?
I hear you.
All right. I'm somehow hooked up through my phone. Can you hear me better than you heard me before?
Yes.
Happy days. Okay. Joshua, now I can ask you and you'll actually hear me. You could respond to that question. Sorry.
All right. Yeah, so again, thank you so much for having me. So, I'm here, part of our Providence district, and we're also part of the greater Fairfax County. And just to speak, with, of course, our county, everyone knows Fairfax County is very diverse, and, we have a huge immigrant population here. And within those immigrant communities, we also have communities within those communities, right? Within the Latinx communities, there are so many different groups, and also within the Asian American community, many different groups. And so when when we're looking at our communities who are currently coping with a difficult situation, one thing we've seen is a lot of times, the immigrant community, it's been difficult to access, or even folks were not eligible for federal aid or benefits. And so after that happened, we've seen a lot of people turn to local government, right? And not local nonprofits. And seeing that for myself, I'm just seeing how important it is that at the local government level, that these services are addressed. For example, the coordinated services planning is a program here in Fairfax County where folks can call, and after an assessment of needs, folks can get the support they need for whether it be shelter, food, healthcare, financial support to pay utilities and bills. So we've been seeing a lot more of that, after what happened with the federal government and after the whole COVID situation. Another thing is, as we're seeing this, a lot of people have been contacting our county, and we've been seeing that, there are times when there were inadequate areas of language access. And so also addressing those for specific community members have been a priority, and we're continuing to improve that. And a lot of times people think Providence District, and the first things that come to mind are Tyson's, Merrifield, but even within our district, there are many different pockets of immigrant communities, especially in the Falls Church region, where there's a deep history of immigrant communities, living there. And so there's just, it was really encouraging to hear what all of you are doing together with the immigrant community. And going forward, we're also very encouraged, and we want to continue to do the work through CSP and through local government efforts.
Terrific. Joshua, we'll stay with you and come back around. Can you tell us a little bit about any particular organizations that are private, governmental, non-governmental, faith-based, whatever they may be, that are doing some especially good and important work in the county for you all on this topic?
Sure. So, I mean, there are there's just so many different organizations doing amazing things along with our local government. But I guess I would just spend this time to highlight some of our local nonprofits who have been partnering with the county and even each other to provide support for the immigrant community. So I would say groups, such as CASA. I know that was mentioned. CASA is also, works very closely with the Latinx community, and also groups like the Northern Virginia Family Services. They are within our district, and they have been partnering with Fairfax County to, help community members navigate the process of, finding shelter or receiving the supports they need. I would also say groups like Edu Futuro, who aren't necessarily within the Providence district, but we just know that a lot of our community members can depend on groups like that. And also groups serving the Asian American community, like NACASEC, that are within within the region, within Northern Virginia and Fairfax County. And so when we look at all these different groups doing all these different work, I'm always reminded just how important these community groups are, right, to all these different communities. Because again, like I said earlier, immigrant communities, it's just not one big group, but it's a group made up of so many different communities. So just to see the diverse groups working on this is really encouraging. I would also say IUTA is also in our district and providing a lot of services, legal services. I mean, there's just so many more, and I just wish I had more time to, highlight these organizations, but I'll stop there.
Okay, great. Stacy, apart from Dar al-Hijra, others?
Yeah, I agree. CASA, Second Story, which is a group that works with youth and teens, they have completely, when their programs were put on pause, they also turned to food distribution, not only in Culmore, but in Springfield and the Bailey's Crossroads area. Northern Virginia Legal Services has been very helpful with eviction issues and housing issues. There's a fairly new nonprofit called Comunidad, Marily Gutierrez, who's been delivering groceries to homebound families and families who are COVID positive. So all of those groups have been really heroic. The Culmore Clinic in our area has partnered with neighborhood health clinics to help people access testing, and that's been a big help, of course. So yeah, as Joshua said, there's so many, I'm sure I'm leaving out a lot, but in Culmore, our direct service providers actually meet once a month. We're called the Culmore Partners Group, and we meet at the Wilson Library every month to share what each of the others are doing. And so we're a fairly tight-knit group of providers that work together, and they're all really remarkable and dedicated to serving that community.
Terrific, great, thank you. Brooke, how about in Arlington?
Yeah, so in Arlington County, to add to the list, I obviously want to echo a lot of the organizations that were mentioned prior. To add to the list, Arlington Thrive is providing rental and emergency financial assistance for rent, utilities, arrears, transportation, medical, and internet expenses for Arlington residents in need. Arlington County Department of Human Services is also unique in that we are providing direct services as well to the community. Any Arlington resident can call 703-228-1300, 703-228-1300, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And we are providing rental and utility emergency financial assistance as well to help people retain their housing and not be evicted. Legal Services of Northern Virginia is helping with evictions, and we're looking at options to expand support to organizations like that as the moratorium on evictions is lifted towards the end of this month. And also AFAC, Arlington Food Assistance Center, is our main provider for distributing food. They have increased the number of sites. They're doing home deliveries or collaborating to provide home deliveries, and are coming up with creative ways to kind of do a grab and go model to get food to low-income residents in need, so that you know, we can protect people and allow for more social distancing.
Great. Before I go to Alexandria, you gave me a 703-228-1300.
That's correct.
And that is for?
Arlington residents to call if they are having a hard time paying rent, utilities, mortgage, arrears, transportation, medical, or internet expenses. And
okay, great. We've got that number up posted in the chat here. So
wonderful.
And we will distribute that as we can. Kate,
Wonderful.
Alexandria.
Great, and I know there is not enough time to list all the nonprofits and the partners who've been working on this, but I do want to name a few. Casa Chiralagua has been amazing in terms of providing support to families, including food and other activities to support the education of students. Tenants and Workers United has really, in terms of leading the way related to advocacy, as well as concrete resources for folks to really push and press to focus on the needs of particularly residents in Chiralagua, but Latinx and low-income individuals across the city. A strong coalition of Ethiopian supportive organizations, ECDC, the Ethiopian Eritrean Alliance for Education, Ethiopian Center for Peace and Progress, and I know I'm leaving out organizations, but really focused on a strong cultural response to individuals understanding what different parts of our community are, how they're affected, and trying to be more responsive in that regard. I need to also acknowledge the faith community, St. Vincent de Paul, Lazarus, Alive. I have to point out specifically for just being so responsive. We've asked them to just keep on growing and being more responsive to us. The amount of food that they've been putting out, the changes that they've made of where they're doing the distributions has been remarkable. And we were fortunate also to deal with World Central Kitchen has been supporting us for many months now and delivering tremendous amounts of high quality food for us in partnership with local restaurants. I also have to acknowledge ACT, our community foundation, who again, we really talk about agility and flexibility across organizations, stretching, and what they've done for us to help with a gift card distribution program that we're about to roll out, as well as the Act Now Fund that has provided a tremendous amount of funding to nonprofits, direct service for emergency response to the pandemic. And then all the public sector, our health department has been absolutely heroic. Also our housing department, I have to give a shout out for our Department of Community and Human Services. Our staff have been pushing and pressing. And I will say too, within the city, we have a weekly call with nonprofits where we're coming together to say, how can we work together? And we're looking at everything from rent to food to legal services and other things, but really, and absolutely distributing PPE out to the community. And people have just been phenomenal and focused on the right things, not on turf, not on who gets credit, but on how do we respond effectively. And it's been phenomenal. And just local residents coming together, the Alexandria Community Alliance saying, we see a need, let's come together, let's get people what they need. So I've been just truly impressed with people's efforts.
Excellent. While I have you, any phone numbers that you'd like us to post for folks to reference if you have them?
Sure. For Department of Community and Human Services, it's 703-746-5700, and that will help you get connected to really any of our services, from rent relief to applying for benefits to we can connect you up to our behavioral health services, domestic violence services, anything that you're looking for. So that's a good number for us. So thanks for the advertisement.
746-5700.
Correct. Thanks.
Fairfax County, number to call.
I just
Oh,
sent
you got it.
that.
Pumped me.
That was a little more than the number, but I hope, yeah, that's a good resource for folks.
Terrific, excellent. Kate, while I have you on a kind of a topic of concern to a lot of folks, what would your advice be to sort of community members who are concerned that coming forward for help might somehow involve them with the immigration authorities?
Yeah, I absolutely recognize the concern. I think one thing I would say is to talk to people you trust, your neighbors and others who will be able to tell you that if our actions that we've had throughout this pandemic, no one has been exposed to any kind of interaction with immigration with and our city has been clear from the very beginning preceding the pandemic that as our commitment is to our residents and that we want residents to have access to every resource that they need to really do the things they want to get done. And so our commitment has been across the board that participating in any service activity or accessing any service would not expose anyone to immigration authorities. But I do think the important piece is to talk to people who you trust and who can tell you that that is the case. I think we've demonstrated it consistently, but I absolutely understand the fear. It's a valid one. But I think it's also, and also to our elected officials, they have been very clear about what their expectations are about how we do things. And I think that's another piece is to talk to advocates and others to say, is this a safe environment? And I believe the answer will be yes.
Sure, great. Brooke, how about in Arlington?
Yeah, so in Arlington and also just in general, I'd like to mention, so USCIS actually released some pretty specific guidance when COVID hit about what would or would not constitute a public charge. And I'll follow up once I finish talking. I'll send a link to everyone on that guidance. Obviously, there's fear in the immigrant community, even if local jurisdictions say, hey, you know what, you can accept our assistance and it's not going to pose a public charge. The fear is still there. And so we have to recognize that. I have spoken with immigration attorneys and I'm very familiar with the public charge regulations, and just want to reiterate on this call that the stimulus check doesn't count as a public charge. It was a refundable tax credit. Unemployment insurance, so receiving unemployment insurance doesn't count as a public charge ever. And receipt, and this is the more important one I think during this period of time, receipt of short-term emergency local benefits won't count as a public charge. And that is straight from USCIS. And so as I mentioned, for example, Arlington County assisting people in paying rent or utilities or any of that, these emergency, short-term emergency local benefits, they do not and will not pose a public charge for immigrant populations, which is what the fear is right now. And so I can follow up in the chat and I'll send out the link on this whole public charge regulation as a result of COVID.
Okay, great. Joshua.
Yeah, so, I would first say that I know I'm going back to the community organizations, but there are just so many community organizations that are doing great things. And I feel like a lot of these community organizations do have, a trust that's built already with the community. It's very different from, the trust with the government. I feel like folks can feel skeptical, and we do get calls with people who have questions about privacy and about these things, and we try our best to answer it, but at the same time there is that fear when people do call where it's kind of like they want to know an answer but they're not certain, and so this is probably the best way but I'm not sure. And so I would say, a lot of these community organizations, our office is already in contact with them, and we're trying our best to reach out to these organizations, these faith groups, to ensure that, hey, you know, like for example, the CSP support that the county is giving, you know, there are no, we don't ask any privacy related questions. You know, status does not matter. It's just our priority is to make sure that your needs are met, and that's it. And so I feel like that information, you know, as an office, we can try our best to do outreach, but in reality, we can't do outreach to all, you know, the 1.2 million people in the community in our district. So I would say definitely getting plugged into an organization that, you know, you can trust would be a great first step. And also, yeah, and also, like as others mentioned, staying plugged into other folks, friends, family who may have these resources. So that's my answer, or my advice.
Stacy, would you like to add to that?
I agree with Joshua that CSP is a very good resource. They have a lot of CARES Act funding right now, and they're ramped up to respond. I was on a call with CSP specifically about the concern of the wave of need that will be coming as the moratorium on evictions is lifted and the courts start to reopen. They will facilitate rental assistance. In Culmore, a unique issue is that many families are just many individuals are couch surfing. They're renting a room or a sofa in someone's apartment off the books without a lease. So they're still being harassed by predatory landlords. And they have been evicted throughout this process, even though the moratorium on evictions has been in place. So I talked specifically with CSP about this, and they agreed that their legal status doesn't matter. They're aware of these kinds of cases. They will assist these cases as well. It doesn't have to be a legal contract with a landlord. They really are open for business to anyone. But I think Kate made a great point. It's just to first start with an organization you've been working with or someone you trust. Because unfortunately, there's just a climate of fear and mistrust right now. Even if barriers to access are very low right now, and there are good resources available, you might understand why it doesn't matter what advice we give. They're not going to trust that.
Sure. So remaining with that, because we have had a couple questions come in specifically from folks who are asking about rental assistance, but they don't have their names on a lease. So CSP in Fairfax, that's the group the entity to call? Yes,
100% CSP, and I think Joshua shared that number. I think it's 703-222-0880. Is that right, Joshua?
Yes. And they are, you know, we just had a conversation with them yesterday, and also another community group, and they are continuing to hear feedback from community organizations and from people in the community to how they can better, improve the lines, the wait time, expanding language services. So I'm just really grateful that there's a lot of initiative being taken on that side.
Okay. How about in Arlington for somebody that doesn't have a lease?
Yep. So Arlington's Department of Human Services provides rental assistance, utility assistance. We do not require a lease. We only require, it's one document called a shelter verification form, where basically the individual says, I'm living, in so-and-so's house and I pay, X amount in rent. And it's signed. It's like a little affidavit signed by the individual. We used to require that it be notarized. We have lifted the notary requirement given COVID. And so we're trying to make it as easy as possible for undocumented residents of Arlington to continue to receive rental assistance during this time. And we do not require a lease.
Okay. Kate, Alexandria.
Same thing. If people want to call 5700, that's fine. It's in both our Department of Community Human Services as well as the Housing Department's significant rental assistance program. That's $600 a month for 3 months. And in neither case are we requiring a lease, and recognize that that's a really critical need. So same thing.
Turning the conversation a little bit toward school-age children. We have a question coming in about, are there any resources available for technological help for families with children in the school and summer programs, and they're working from home? or they're learning from home rather. And so is there any assistance with something like that, staying in Alexandria?
Yes, our school system has really been focused on assuring that all families have adequate technology supports. And so if there's been a barrier there, I would definitely follow up with the school system, as well as assisting with connectivity. So trying to, while Comcast has offered free coverage, we also know that's been not totally consistent in terms of connectivity for families, and so they are giving out hotspots and other things. But I think that's the best place to start, and then there are some other resources that we can get out to folks.
I'm actually going to piggyback just one other question on that before I turn to the other jurisdictions. We'll also have folks asking about sort of childcare, free or low-cost childcare for parents who managed to get back to work.
Yeah, it's very difficult. The childcare community has been impacted so negatively during the pandemic, and we have had some, to be valiant, staying open, but still with the challenges of underutilization and trying to keep a safe environment. With the phase 3 occurring in Virginia soon, all childcare providers can be open. And we are anticipating additional assistance for families and for the child care providers. So it's very difficult. We also are looking within Alexandria as the summer and the school year progresses, providing strong support through our recreation department, through our Campagna Center program and others, and the family child care. And the family child care homes have been remarkable in trying to, and offer an alternative too, where if families are concerned about having their children in a larger scale setting, family child care is perfect, and really conscientious child care providers throughout the city, and really reflective of the culture, multiple cultures within the city. So there is enough funding for child care subsidy. And again, you can 700 number and we can direct you to get that support.
Terrific. Thank you. Arlington, childcare and support for kids in school.
Sure. So I've already mentioned, but if you call the 703-228-1300, Arlington County is helping individuals in paying for internet connectivity. So we are paying people's internet bills and, getting them hooked up with internet if they haven't had it prior in the home, so that kids can effectively do schoolwork from home. So please call that number Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and we can assist with that. I would also recommend reaching out to Arlington Public Schools social workers if parents are looking for some additional resources for some self-study options at home. And as far as childcare, Arlington has our state childcare subsidy program, as well as Arlington supplements its state childcare subsidy program with local childcare subsidy dollars. And we also recently got a pretty significant donation from Nestle Corporation to help fund childcare for low-income residents of Arlington. So the same number you would call, 703-228-1300. The one barrier we have had, obviously, as a result of COVID, is finding providers that are open and able to take the subsidy, but we have available money. And for low-income residents of Arlington, you can call and we can, work with you to hopefully get you to apply and hopefully be approved for the child care subsidy. The wonderful thing about the child care subsidy that's local is it pays the fair market rate of childcare, which is obviously with the dearth of childcare providers in the area. We want to make sure that the local subsidy pays what anyone off the private market would pay, and the client's portion of what they would pay every month is only 5% of their household income.
Great, thank you. Joshua, Fairfax County.
Yeah, so, of course, with everything that's happening during the summer, a lot of our summer programs got postponed and canceled, a lot of art programs. But as an alternative, the county, the public school system has opened up other opportunities, optional virtual opportunities for students to join in. And these include of course it differs by grade range, but there are just a lot listed. Continuing learning, iReady, fine arts learning programs, tech adventure camps at home, and there's just so many other learning opportunities provided by FCPS. This is a link that I can also provide. It's open to, all our county students. So that is a great opportunity for folks to take advantage of. For healthcare, folks can also call the CSP and get information in that. I know earlier someone said that, accessing childcare, did I say healthcare? Accessing childcare was just really a struggle in the beginning with everything happening during COVID, because there is a lot of uncertainty on things being shut down. But luckily, a lot of our, because it was considered essential, because we noticed that a lot of our immigrant families were, folks were essential workers, which meant, it was kind of a conflicting situation where would the children go, right, while the parents are at work. So luckily, we were able to make sure that our childcare facilities stayed open. And yeah, if folks want to get more resources, I'll just send things in through the chat.
Okay, great. Stacy, anything you'd like to add to that?
I would just echo that, yes, childcare is a challenge even outside of COVID. Under the umbrella of COVID, it's been an increased challenge. But as someone mentioned, I think Brooke mentioned the school social workers, the parent liaisons and school social workers in FCPS schools, Fairfax County schools, are some of our best partners on the ground in terms of referring families to us and making them aware of the services that we offer and the other services that are out there. And even though the schools have been closed, FCPS has been very busy. And I know I'm talking to those social workers and parent liaisons all the time. So I think that could be a good first point of contact. Reach out to them and see and because it's always expanding and growing to meet the need, the evolving need. So I would start with them and see what's available through FCPS.
Well, Joshua actually anticipated my next question in the slip of a tongue he had about healthcare, because that's where we're going. But I'll start with you, Stacy. We have a specific question. Someone asking if there's any organization or entity providing masks to the immigrant community. And if I can piggyback on that, how about, healthcare resources in Culmore or maybe elsewhere?
In Culmore, this was a big issue early on. There were a lot of essential workers in the Latinx community. They were out there every day, and there was a lack of PPE, and there was some good response. Anthem Healthkeepers provided masks, United Healthcare provided masks as well. Our own sewing students at the Islamic Center began to sew masks, and there were other sort of grassroots efforts at sewing masks, which we've been distributing through the food distribution at the Culmore Resource Center. So I think that there are more available now than there were early on. We work very closely with the Culmore Clinic, which provides holistic care for uninsured patients in Fairfax County. They don't have to live in Fairfax County, but because their partner network for specialty care is in the county, it makes the referrals easier if they do. And they've had to move to telemedicine, but even with that, they've been very active in outreach, getting meds to their patients and connecting them with the needed resources. So I think that's the best healthcare resource I'm aware of. And as I said earlier, they partnered with Neighborhood Health to ramp up the testing, which has been so needed in that community as well. Okay,
Joshua, more resources on health and the mask thing. And where can somebody go to get tested?
Yeah, so when we look at masks, we have been getting a lot of inquiries for folks who were looking to donate masks. And I guess one of the conversations we had were, if we were to distribute these masks, what is an organization in our district who, works with a lot of community members who need these masks. So, you know, there's a lot of community outreach done on that part to get that information. And for, you know, when we talk about testing, you know, I know Fairfax County had a few tests, you know, a few weeks ago, and that was something, you know, I mean, there's just like an overwhelming amount of people who came through, right? And we didn't, and I think a lot of that, the reasoning behind that was because it was drive-through testing, which was pretty efficient. And also there wasn't like a requirement, or, you know, it wasn't like, oh, you need to have, you need to show proof of status, or you need to show your, like, a lot of private information and things like that. It was very accessible. And also there was, you know, it didn't matter if you had symptoms or not, you know, folks, if they just wanted to get tested, they could show up and get tested. And so I really think that's what caused a lot of folks to come through. And going forward, I think there are more tests planned. And from the county, the approach is to make sure folks in the community who don't necessarily have access to testing, right? And we're talking about immigrant communities, you know, folks who are essential workers. How can we better reach out to those communities to provide testing for those communities and in those communities? And so we are currently expanding on that and working with different organizations to figure out ways to continue to test across the county.
Brooke, how about in Arlington?
Yeah, so in Arlington County, pretty much from the jump, we had a drive-through testing site at Virginia Hospital Center. But the one critique of that site was that, you know, you needed a car and you needed a doctor's script. And so it made it hard for a lot of uninsured and undocumented immigrants that maybe, you know, getting the doctor's prescription for the test was going to be hard. So as I mentioned earlier in the call, and I have more specific information I can put in the chat, Arlington has set up a free walk-up testing site for Arlington residents at Arlington Mill Community Center. You do have to call for an appointment, but we're pretty much giving same-day appointments. When you call, the line is always staffed in English and Spanish. The number is 703-912-0118. The only thing that you need to bring is a photo ID. Does not have to be a government issued ID. It could be anything that basically just says you are who you say you are. It could be a library card, a passport, doesn't matter. And have to be symptomatic, and you do not need a doctor's note. We've created a unique arrangement where our director of public health is actually writing the prescriptions for all of the individuals on site right then and there. So we can go ahead and get them tested right on the spot with the prescription from Dr. Varghese right there on site. So I have 2 flyers, one in English, one in Spanish, that I'd be happy to send to you so you can disseminate later, and I'll put the number in the chat. But once again, for Arlington residents, free testing, walk up. You do require an appointment, but people are getting appointments same day, and no prescription needed, and you only have to show a picture ID.
Great, thank you. Kate, Alexandria.
Sure. On the mask front, we have been distributing masks to any nonprofit that needs them. We've been doing that through Volunteer Alexandria, another great partner. We purchased a large number of masks, and those are getting out the door now. All you need to do, if you're part of a nonprofit, say, to be sure that they've gotten the amount that they need. We've also we'll be handing out masks during every food distribution event that we have, and we will have them available at our large departmental sites. And we also have had, just across the community, so many people donating masks, and there have been some organized distribution of those things, as well as I want to do a shout out to Marsha Call, who is somebody who's done a tremendous amount of collecting of key things. One of the things that she focused on was thermometers for families. So she worked with others to raise enough money to get 1,000 thermometers out to families that we've given out during the food distribution events. So I think we've made progress on the mask front, and that's something we'll continue to do throughout the pandemic. On the healthcare side, neighborhood health is really our key partner, as well as our health department. And neighborhood health is really offering testing very broadly. And so I would really recommend that folks connect with them. We also on our website have a table that shows all of the testing resources across our area. And so I would take a look at that, but I think begin with neighborhood health, and they're really working to meet the needs significantly in our community and across the region, I think. So,
Kate, while I have you, actually, we have time for maybe 2 more questions. One for sure, though. That question is, though everyone's talked a little bit about food distribution, any upcoming food distribution specifically, when and where, coming up soon, if you could tell us that.
Perfect. Tomorrow outside of Casa Chiralagua, 5 o'clock, that'll be the last World Central Kitchen distribution that we'll be doing there. And for each of those, while the meals are distributed, Alive is also wrapping around with groceries, and there should also be masks available there. So that'll be tomorrow. We also do have Hunger Free Alexandria has the listing of all of, and I need to send, we'll do follow-up information to you guys, but Hunger Free Alexandria has all the food distribution events that we have, and we have at least, one happening every single week, and we're doing them throughout the West End and Chiralagua area. So thank you again. Thanks for that advertisement too.
Absolutely. Arlington, Brooke.
Sorry, I have to unmute myself. Yes, so our main food distribution, as I mentioned previously, is being done through AFAC, Arlington Food Assistance Center. If you are an Arlington resident and are not currently registered with AFAC, you can call the same number, 703-228-1300. We can get you signed up over the phone. And then they have, I believe, 13, but don't quote me on it, 13 distribution sites throughout the county. And so you can pick the site that is, the closest and most convenient for you. And they have a grab and go delivery and offer fresh foods, milk, fruit, vegetables, meat, so on and so forth, one time a week. So it's supplemental groceries that are nutritious for families in need.
And may I please jump back in because I gave the wrong location. We're at John Adams tomorrow, not at Casa Chiralagua. And thank you, Councilman Aguirre, for correcting me. So thank you. I'm putting it in the chat. Sorry for the interruption.
Fairfax County, Joshua.
Yeah, and I think, thanks. For food distribution, that FCPS has done, quite an amazing job making sure that communities, have a safe way, people have a safe way of coming in and getting the food necessary and leaving. So I would say if there, I can send those resources if anyone has not heard about those yet. I know that I'm sure that's not possible because it was such big news. And I would also like to lift up at this time, we have an organization right in our district. It's called Food for Others. And one of the, they're doing great things distributing food. And one of the things our office and Supervisor Polchik really took the initiative on was to work with our HOAs in our district, and I also want to highlight our HOAs because they have been contributing thousands and thousands of pounds of food. And we've been working closely in partnership with the community, HOAs, with Food for Others. And so organizing this has been, a big pleasure. And Food for Others has made it very easy for our office to organize this with our HOAs, and also stuffed the bus with the whole countywide initiative. Where we have drop-off locations at different community centers and libraries. And I can also send a follow-up on that as well.
Great, thank you. Stacy, food distribution in Culmore. We'll wrap up with you.
Yeah, there are several organizations that have regular distributions right now that normally have regular distributions and have even ramped up under COVID response. St. Anthony of Padua Church and Second Story, as I've mentioned, and Casa, and at Darul Hijra, we have a weekly distribution. On Thursdays right now, we're distributing 400 of the Farmers to Family food boxes. They're 25-pound boxes. We're moving 5 tons of food out of the parking lot every Thursday morning. But I would say to any resident of Fairfax that Fairfax County has done a good job of putting together a spatial map on their website that shows all of the food resources, including what Joshua touched on, the FCPS grab-and-go sites, pop-up food markets, nonprofits, all of them under one umbrella. So that's a really great tool if they can easily Google and find the site closest to them on any given day and time.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, we've run at the end of our time. I want to take a moment to thank you so much for participating today, and thank you for the work that you do. Given the profound lack of leadership at our higher levels of our country, it's a local level where folks have really taken up the task and gotten the job done. And so thank you to our nonprofit partners. Thank you to our public servants and our civil servants that, you know, making things work and helping the community through this. We appreciate it very much. Feel free to forward all your resources to us, and we will distribute them. Everyone who signed up for today's presentation will receive an info sheet in English and in Spanish, listing the resources mentioned in the last hour, and we'll get those out to you in a couple days. Thank you again for your support. Last pitch for Liberty's Promise. You want to learn more about us? www.libertiespromise.org. I think I forgot that at the beginning. Thank you so much, and thank you for your great work. We appreciate it greatly, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Muchas gracias.
Bye now.